Well, good morning or evening, depending on where you are in the globe, to Australia's launch of our xAPI collective. Myself and Andrew, who I'll introduce shortly, decided that it was time that Australia got to know what xAPI is and what it could do. So we've come together and created the xAPI collective, where we're going to start talking about all things xAPI and what it can do in our learning environment. So if we move to the next slide. Okay, so why we're here, as I just said, we want to start getting out to the world and out to Australia in particular what xAPI is and what it can do, and how it is the future really, and it can start giving us better information on what it is in our learning environments. So we want to start bringing people together. We want to start talking about case studies. We're going to have guest speakers. We are going to start having a website with newsletters and sharing stories and helping people understand what xAPI is and how it can benefit you in your learning or in your environment. So who are we? As I said, my name's Julian Davis. I know some of you. I've been around xAPI since its inception, roughly when it used to be called Tin Can. To me, I literally stumbled across it as a way of finding out more information of what students were doing in a distant learning environment within an RTO, so registered training organization. I've slowly discovered more and more and more about xAPI and what it can do, and it's time for me to give back and start to share about what it is that we can do. I have a little motto, which is stay curious. And this is, I kind of want to take you guys with me on that, is stay curious, don't be scared, have a play with what you can do. I met Andrew last year, and we share a common bond of what xAPI is and what it can do. So I'm going to let Andrew introduce himself.
Thanks, Julian. Yes, I also have been well aware of xAPI since its inception of Tin Can. And when I say we, I've got a business partner named David Johnson. And we liked the concept so much that we founded our company on it and built a platform that embraces LRS and xAPI as the foundational technology that we use every day. So it's fair to say that we've practiced what we've preached in terms of embracing and using xAPI as a technology. And we've been on the journey with organisations here in Australia to help them understand the benefits of it, not only using us, but just more broadly, just understanding the use of the technology and how important it is to be able to think more broadly about data and the way that is being collected. So really excited to share our journey and our knowledge and our experience over the years and how xAPI can be used practically, and form a like-minded community as well. So very happy to be here.
Cool, thank you. So if we want to move on to the next one, and I'm gonna hand over to Andrew. We're gonna actually talk about why we're here in a little bit more detail.
Absolutely. So the problem. What is the problem? What's the problem? What is the problem going on in organizational learning nowadays? Let's just blame it solely on the LMS, I think. Let's just point it's the LMS. No, not at all. But I think that one of the problems with LMS is just the way that the thinking is limited to that as being it's often the organizational source of training and learning, wherein things, learning, people, experience, skills happen well outside of the bounds of what an LMS contains. So when we're talking about sharing through the collective, it's starting to think about digital learning in particular. It doesn't have, not just digital, all learning can happen and can be tracked outside of this enterprise LMS. So LMS-centric thinking, the problem, not LMSs themselves, but then that flows into learning data as well, because learning data doesn't just sit in the LMS either. We know the data we do get from LMS being fairly high level, right? So compliance and completion dates, things like that, wherein data for what a person is doing exists everywhere. It could be in spreadsheets, it could be in survey results, it could be in SharePoint sites. It's all over the place. So data is fragmented, and then what that flows into next is reporting. So reporting doesn't always mean understanding what's happening with people in the organization as well. So, if you, I'm sure that everyone else here has done that, where I presented a report to stakeholders and said, look at this, 90% completion, aren't we good? We get a big tick and we get a pat on the back and we say, aren't we great? And then afterwards we talk to our colleagues and say, do we actually understand if anyone's learned anything? And we're like, no, not really. We don't really understand. We like to think so, because as instructional designers, we feel as if we've embedded methodology into our learning that will correlate to learning happening because of completion. But ultimately, more data is needed to have an understanding of if skills and capabilities exist within the workforce, but also, and just as important, I feel, is the learning that you're running being effective. How effective is your learning, and is it being delivered in an efficient way? So there's lots more we could find through reporting and understanding. So organisations, they don't know really where to start, we feel, when thinking about where to get better data from, how to get better insights, how do we do this thing, which brings us to our collective today and why we've embraced xAPI from the outset. Next slide. So the community of practice, we're here to share experience and share practical stories and practical examples of how xAPI can be used. There might be ways that it's being used that some people haven't even thought of yet, or some applications. Some of the things that can be achieved with our little friend AI is quite amazing with xAPI. So using xAPI, sharing stories, that's what we're here to do. Being led by practitioners, we've all had experience using it. We're wanting to share that. It's not about looking at things from a theoretical perspective. It's looking at focusing on real outcomes, real architectures, decisions, lessons, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what to look out for. We're not promoting any organizations or vendors. It's all about what xAPI is all about. It's about the methodology and the standard. And we're not going to be talking about some of the going into the weeds about how this can be, what are the rules about using it, all those types of things. This is more about practical application, and we're not going to be talking too much about academics and theory. So the collective is here to join people together, to share stories, and to really come together and talk about some of the really great benefits that xAPI can have. So
Cool.
Next on, Julian.
This is the quote we want to get out there. So we want people to share this, is that learning data should help us make better decisions, data-driven decisions. And that's why we created this xAPI collective, is to start getting people together, getting that community together so we can actually start sharing ideas, sharing solutions, sharing what happens, and start to make this more possible and move towards the future, particularly with what Andrew said in regards to AI. There's a lot of that happening at the moment. And I know our guest speaker I'll talk about shortly is working very closely with that as well. So this is the time that we actually need to get on board with this. So I'm going to jump in now because I wanted to give a little bit of a history, like a very, very high overview of what xAPI is and where it fits in the world. So we all know SCORM, and this is the AI dictionary definition of SCORM. So if we hit next, it'll give us our nouns and our examples and our synonyms of what SCORM is. If you didn't know, SCORM is actually an acronym for Shareable Content Object Reference Model, and it's I've often used it in the past when people just talk about SCORM, and it sounds really technical, but it's been around for a long time, and it's very, very linear in design. So it will only tell you whether someone's started, completed, and what their score is. So it's very, very limited. if we move on to xAPI, we can now see that it is much more interoperable and much, much, much more granular in what it can do. So it talks down the bottom there in the Cinnamon Tin Can API. That is how it started. That was the original name for the project. I think we've gone back about 15 years now, maybe around about that time. The X in xAPI is experience, meaning that something that somebody has done. So it's an experience that somebody has experienced, and they're all captured in what's called a learning record store. Now, to you, without getting into the technical jargon about how xAPI works, Andrew, if you can hit next for me, we look at it's based on someone did something, right? So in the xAPI terminology world, we call this an actor, a verb, and an activity or an object. To put it into context in the real world, if we say that John Smith played a video, that is our actor and our verb and our activity. So our activity can actually define what that video is. Go back. Sorry. Our activity can define what it actually is, what the video is, and the played will actually tell us what it was that they did. That was the experience that they did. Now, played can actually have multiple meanings. So it could mean that I played a game, or I played a video, or I played a game of Monopoly. It has different meanings. So within the xAPI world, the verb actually has a definition of what it is. So it's a unique URL that will give you the definition of what it is. So we do know at that point that John Smith played a safety video on firefighting, for example. We can also get more granular with this, and we can find out whether someone paused a video, whether they skipped a video, whether they turn the volume up, turn the volume down. There's a lot of things that we can actually get out of that video that you just can't get out of SCORM. So if we bring this into a bigger environment and how it can work, and I'm going to throw a word out there without getting technical, it's called the total learning architecture. And that is a story for another day. We're not going to get into that today. But if you think about the learning record store where xAPI is kept as a bicycle wheel, in the middle of the bicycle wheel, you've got your hub. And we've got all these spokes that come into the hub that pull it all together. And in the middle of that hub is our learning record store. So that's where all our xAPI data is going to come from. But where's it going to come from? So it could come from augmented reality. It could come from an online course or interaction or communication. It could come from any website. It can come from a video. It can come from an application. It can come from conversations, messages. It can come from YouTube. It can come from VR. There are so many different things that we can feed into the LRS that will identify what our learner is doing and give us a better picture and a better understanding of what we can do. We have that data. It's not siloed inside. It's not siloed inside an LMS. So as well as stay curious, you need to think outside the LMS. That's the other one that I use. Think outside the LMS. So that is really, really high level, because I don't want to waste any more time on this. Not that it's a waste of time, but I really want to introduce our guest speaker. And so our guest speaker, some of you may know her. I know Matt does. Her name is Megan Torrance, and she is from Torrance Learning in the US. Now, I've known Megan now. We probably met about 5 or 6 years ago online. Pre-COVID, maybe more than that, yes. We did get to meet in person at Learn Dev in Vegas a couple of years ago, which was fantastic. So could you just hit next for me, please, Andrew? So Megan is the founder of Torrance Learning. It's a consultancy company in the US, and that's been around. Actually, how long have you been around?
Oh, since 2003, so 23
wow.
years old.
23 years. So they must be doing something right. So she's at the forefront of data first learning, xAPI adoption, and connecting learning strategies. Very proactive in promoting what xAPI can do. Data analytics, she's an author, so she's written a few books as well. I'm not going to take all of her glory away from what she's done, but her LinkedIn profile is there. please connect with her. Share some amazing insights and amazing stories. And I'm going to hand it over to Megan to have a little bit of a chat with us.
Julian, Andrew, Jeff, Jonathan, Matthew, Cecilia, and Jan, Gen Z, this is fantastic. Like I'm so excited to be here at your launch, to see what you're doing. And I think, we talked about stay curious, and we talked about stay out of the LMS, but also there's such community. And that's what is really, really exciting for me about xAPI. And it comes from the fact that xAPI is actually an open source standard. So it doesn't actually cost you anything to use. Yes, you need tools and you need platforms to store your data, or you could make your own. The code is available, and the spec is available. You don't have to pay to license xAPI. You could just use it. And it's community created and community curated, and it's actually the IEEE's first global open source standard, which is pretty cool, and also sometimes boggles the standards body, because how do you do this? Right? So I wasn't kidding. If you want to get into all the standards, there's a committee link in the chat. But we talked about the LMS, and in 2002, I actually implemented my first LMS. It was the client organization's first LMS. It was the software company's first LMS, and it was my first LMS. And it was this newfangled thing with this cool thing called SCORM. It was cool back then. It's 2002. Cut me some slack. But here's the thing that was useful about SCORM. Any piece of e-learning made by anybody who could use that data standard worked in any learning management system. So my client could choose any number of vendors to make their stuff, and it would just go in their new LMS. They could buy stuff off the shelf. They could make it. They could hire people who knew how to make it. So it's the platforms, the tools, and the human capital, right? The people and the skills to be able to use this. And that interoperability is why we're all here. So now, in order back then to be that interoperable, it needed to be fairly basic. And back then, right, we could get away with tracking the learning that existed inside of a learning management system. And that was probably plenty enough. It was what we could handle, right? Fast forward a few years, we have mobile environments, we have disconnected environments, we have groups of people learning, we have learning that, believe it or not, happens from outside the e-learning, even when you're not in an LMS, even when you're not connected to the internet, right? You have all sorts of different, right? You have devices that are sending. Actually, we did, my buddy Matt Cleaver will recognize this. We even put, for one of our very first xAPI projects, we put an accelerometer in the guts of a stuffed fish and threw it. And when it got to a certain speed, it would send an xAPI statement to a learning record store. Right? So there's all sorts of things that you can do to collect data in an xAPI environment. But what was really cool for me getting involved very early on is that there was a community of people learning and sharing together. What can we do with this thing? How do we make it work? How do we share what we're learning with each other? And it became this really cool opportunity that was, at the time, there's an xAPI design cohort, and it's like, let's push on this. It was almost like an open source hackathon that ran for months and months and months at a time. Super cool stuff, right? Then as the specification starts getting much more firmed up, right? We moved from a design cohort to what we created was a learning cohort. How do we get more people using this? How do we get more people asking their software providers for it? How do we get more people who know what to do with this data when they get it? How do we get more people who know how to make it and send it and use it? And we created the xAPI cohort, and this guy who was the gnome, and actually this guy actually sent his he was the person throwing the fish in the first ever xAPI project that we did. And we started this global movement, and that's where I met Julian. Sorry, we tapped into a global movement. I didn't start it. We tapped into it. But so there's so much here, right? What I love about xAPI, aside from the community and the sharing and the collaboration, is that there's a space you can DIY this yourself. You can buy tools that do it so you don't have to do it. You can build software that has that built in. There's lots of different ways to plug into this. And I remember the early days of people, and they couldn't pronounce xAPI, and they didn't know what xAPI was, or they'd say, "Oh, we do all the APIs." Like that doesn't mean anything, right? Certainly not. This is a different kind of API. And now I talk to people, right? Not always, but I do talk to people who are like, "Of course we do xAPI. Of course." Well, you wanted data out of it, right? And that's such a fantastic journey. I love that you're joining us on this journey. You're joining us in flight, Julian. You've been there for years, right? So I think that's just a really exciting space. But here's the thing: not only can you track all sorts of learning that happens in all sorts of different ways in really, really granular things, you can also use xAPI to be, for example, your source of record or your documentation of what happens in an AI experience. And now you're storing that data. You're keeping record of it for an audit trail. You're able to evaluate it later on, use that data and feed that back into the system in an organized, tagged way. Not just random fluffs of chunks of data, right? Organized and tagged. You can also use your xAPI data as triggers, right, in other things. So an if this, then that kind of trigger, right? If you are cruising your way through a learning program, you're rocking and rolling, that triggers your ability to move on to the next step. If you're struggling, and we define struggling by how you answer questions, how long it takes you to answer questions, how many different chances it takes to answer a question, which, by the way, SCORM only records one. So we don't know how many times it took you to get the answer right. Okay. All that information, we could then say, well, maybe we should offer you this different learning experience. Or outside of the learning environment, maybe we need to restrict or grant access to different types of things happening in systems and tools in the workplace because of how you're learning and performing. But then here's the other thing about xAPI. Because it is shared and global and interoperable, and it gets outside of the LMS, it allows you to pass data from one place to another. And that gets to, right, what happens is we're looking at this total learning architecture. I can learn something on one job, store it with a credentialing body, and access that credential, not the content, but the credentials and some of the details from a different place in a different location. And that portability of data is really important. Julian, I know you've had a variety of learning experiences and workplace experiences. And I remember when we were first doing the early days of xAPI, my son was actually moving from one school to another. And in order to, as he moved into this new school, they said, "Oh, we need his transcript so we know what he's been doing." And you know what they did? They printed out from one system a transcript onto paper, and they faxed it to the next school, who then hand entered it. But it just got to the point, like we have these systems that don't track data the same ways, that don't connect to each other the same ways, and that have completely unportable data environments. And that school environment was just one of those things was like, this is all about xAPI. Okay, Jeff's got a question for us. I know questions will come, and I'm so glad that, like, just bring questions as we go. In fact, I'm going to stop talking. I need to drink water here. I know questions will come. What do you say is the best content delivery format to capture xAPI statements? Practical X. activities, an apprentice mechanic. So Jeff, I only had one child because I would never be able to choose which one is my favorite. So here's the thing. I may answer this a slightly different way. You can capture and data with xAPI from any learning experience, as long as you can digitize it. Whether the learning experience happens in a digital world, including, by the way, in an LMS, right? But it could happen in a digital world, or it could happen in the wet world and somebody observes it, either with video or with a rubric, or they write up their feedback afterwards, or you survey them. Like, all of those things would be possible. I could take a photograph, right? I could envision an environment. I take a photograph of something that happens mechanically, and that can be digitally scored and stored either by a human, myself, an instructor, an evaluator, a customer, right? Or in an automated system, or even an AI system with, right, that's using a rubric, calculating whether or not I did whatever this mechanical thing is correctly, which, by the way, I'm utterly unmechanical, so it would not be done correctly. And ideally, then we now have a lot more information to give me personalized feedback. Oh, and we even once built, when I say we, I really mean Matt Cleaver, who's joining me on this call tonight. I built a system that allowed us to photograph a flip chart in a classroom and store the digital record of the flip chart as part of an xAPI statement that would be stored along with the rest of your learning records for that experience. So if you can digitize it, you can store it. Now, the vast, vast, vast majority of xAPI statements that are being used right today, this very moment as we speak, are e-learning. So there's a lot of replacement of the existing, and replacement and extension of the existing. And then there's some really interesting edge cases going on about some really neat things out there too.
Megan, I might add another insight to that, if you don't mind, because it's a great question, I think, from Jeff. I would say with xAPI, what that means to us is that what would be the delivery format that suits the learner the best? Think about it from a learner-centric perspective, because you're not restricted by the technology you have to deliver it to it like you would be with an LMS anymore. So whatever it is the learner has, a phone, an app, whatever it is, what is going to be the best way to deliver the content to them? And you can now start thinking about, that's how I can use xAPI to deliver it, because as long as it's digital, you are going to be able to use xAPI to capture that statement. So user-centric, thinking about the user in mind, what suits them the best, what's going to suit your delivery of content. That's the thing that's probably, when you say the best is the one that suits the learner the most, and you're going to get the most uptake for it. In my subtle, humble opinion.
Oh, don't be humble about it. I think it's a great answer.
My correct opinion, that's what it is.
Exactly.
No, that's great, great, Jeff. And I'll we can have a more conversation offline if you want to go deeper into some of those things that what we can and can actually do with it. And we, within the xAPI world, we call them activity providers or learning providers of things that will feed xAPI into that hub that I was talking about earlier. So yeah, happy to have a chat further.
Oh, so here's another good question. Jonathan has a question. When deciding between, I'll let you guys answer first. When deciding between using an LMS embedded LRS versus a standalone LRS, what criteria should drive that decision? Notably, he's not asking us to choose our favorite.
We're vendor agnostic here at the collective.
Yes, we are.
I think that my opinion would be, you got to look at your legacy. So how much legacy content do you have that is existing still on your LMS that you are tied to? If you're not tied to legacy LMS and old SCORM files, then I would say standalone LRS for sure, because so much is able to be done with it. Embedding xAPI content into an LMS is now definitely achievable, and you can do it. But unless you've got a reason to stick to your old LMS, I would say move away, in my opinion.
I have to agree as well. I can't confirm. I've only that I've spoken to people that there are some vendors out there that will have an LRS embedded in their LMS, but won't let you send data to it. So it does completely defeat the purpose of why you would do that. So by having that standalone LRS, I think is a much better option.
Yeah, I think there's some consideration here, right? So what criteria would drive that decision? Absolutely. Do I have a ton of existing content that needs to live in an LMS, or do I have a compliance component that's really important, right? Or a structured learning pathway that's really important so that I can follow up with people. One thing that LMSs do really well is they know who hasn't done something. Right. So an LRS knows who has done something because it sends that statement, Julian, right? Bob watched a video, or Megan ate cupcakes, or whatever. Lots of cupcakes. But the don't judge.
No judging. No judging.
And so but if Megan didn't eat a cupcake, there's no record of it. Right. And a learning management system knows that Megan was supposed to eat a cupcake but didn't, so maybe we should follow up with her. So there's some meaningful there. Now, if you only can buy one thing and you need an LMS and an LRS, then you would want to get an LMS that has an LRS inside. You are generally, not exclusively, going to only have that, what Matt said in the chat. You're not going to be able to get data, and what Andrew said, right? You're not going to be able to get data from outside the LMS into them. Some of them you can. Okay? But also, I would encourage you to, I'll add this right after Matt's link or comment here, so we're kind of tracking with that question. I would encourage you, as you have an LMS that says it does do xAPI, that you test the extent to which it does xAPI. Many of them now do xAPI at a SCORM equivalency. So you can launch a course, you can see if it's complete, you can see how people answered questions, how long it took to them to take it, and what their current progress is. You're not getting anything more than you would get out of SCORM. You might get a couple of little things. You may have a hard time getting that data back out. You may have a hard time recording data that doesn't look already like a SCORM data. You may have different kinds of challenges. And so we actually, a few years ago, again, when I say we, I mean Matt Cleaver, built a test suite or test set of files that allow you to put a piece of content that sends full xAPI into your learning management system and see what data you get out of it. By the way, it teaches you a little bit about xAPI. It's kind of handy. And so and then it has an answer key. This is what you should be able to see and get reported out from your learning management system if your LMS is doing full on xAPI within it. So there's lots and lots of options there. So it's really, Jonathan, taking a look at your total stack and what you need. I'm going to go back to Andrew's answer. It depends on what your learners and your organization needs from a hosting, storage, data, and processing perspective.
I'll put one more thing out there. It depends how far into the future you want to go as well. Because in 5 years, the way things are going, the LMS might be obsolete. Like, that's a big statement, right? But some of the things I've been hearing, some of the plans that Copilot's got, they're really pushing hard to disrupt the LMS space. So, you know, AI, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that, which is why we're all looking at things like xAPI.
Yeah. Thank you, Meg. I mean, we can go on and talk about this for hours and hours and hours. We certainly could, but I'm years. I'm mindful of time as well. So, and yeah, so I can't thank Megan enough for coming on. We know it's her nighttime there, and we really do appreciate your time and sharing your words of wisdom. And like I said, if you're not already connected to Megan, please connect out and reach out to her. And she's got an amazing range of tools sitting on her website as well, which I've gone into and many times. So from here, Andrew, you able to bring up the presentation again, so we can talk about what's coming up next.
Should we go to the next one?
Yeah.
There we go.
Are we up? Can't see it yet.
Oh, awesome. You got Shelley on next.
We do. So I can't see. I can't see the presentation. Is it sharing yet, or?
Yep. This is the Shelley Blake plaque slide.
Okay. I don't know why I can't see it, but anyway, no, that's all right. I've just figured out I've got meeting and screen at the top. That's just we're IT. So what we're coming up next is and Megan, I might just get you to just briefly touch on what the Institute for Infrastructure and Interoperable Data in Learning is, and then I'll lead into what we're doing.
That sounds good. Yes, just when you thought you could say shareable content object reference model without pausing, we get to the Institute for Infrastructure and Interoperable Data in Learning. So I2IDL, or I2 for short, is it's an independent, non-governmental group, nonprofit organization that's really looking at how do we move xAPI and interoperable data forward in this quarter of the century, right? Operating the open source systems that help us all keep track of what data, what the data standards are, the hub for research and innovation. How do we measure and evaluate interoperability and whether or not systems work? And really then looking at new opportunities around innovation, research, grants, and exploration. So lots and lots of things going on. And really our goal is that this is where you come when you need to figure out how to use xAPI and what to do. I2 is an opportunity to get connected and involved, and I think it really dovetails nicely with what xAPI Collective is doing here. And so there's a free sign up at the link that just dropped in the chat. Thank you, and a chance to connect in there. It would be definitely a good complement here. If you're just getting started, stay here. For those of you who are ready to take a few more steps, stay here and go to I2IDL.
Absolutely. And we've got Shelley, who's the president of this, and I2 is very new. It only launched in the last 6 months, 3 months. Very, very new, isn't it?
3 months, yeah.
3 months. So there we go. So Shelley's going to come on and talk about the future of the learning infrastructure and what they're doing. As Matt's put the link in there, go and have a look. Lots of predictions that they're coming up with on where things are going. Their top 10 predictions. I think they're slowly releasing them every week. And I think we're up to 6 because I'm finding them really, really interesting as I go through and apply them in my world about how they could work. So invitations will go out on the website in the next week or so, and also go up on LinkedIn, and we can start looking at our next event. Our plan is to try and have these every 4 to 6 weeks. We're going to talk about different things each week. We're going to have a guest speaker each week. We would love for you to share anything that you would really like to look at, and when we can look at actually having the community-led type discussions on what it is that you're trying to do. If you've got problems that you're trying to solve, we'd really love to try and help you with that. We've got the collective page on LinkedIn as well. Feel free to reach out there as well. And that's pretty much it. We wanted to limit it to 45 minutes. I think we've done all right. I think we're 2 minutes off. We've had some great questions, and this really is just the tip of what we want to do. So I please do encourage you to get the word out and come along on this journey and see how we can kind of change the way that you get your learning data. So with that,
absolutely. Thanks, Julian.
Thank you for
so much,
coming.
Megan. that was
Thank you
some
again.
of the great best insights into xAPI that I've heard for a long time. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing that with us.
Right. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. This will be online in the next few days for you to view if you want to share it out. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.